Hey guys, Jim Skelton here, and welcome in to the 5-Minute Watch Review. Here we're going to take more or less 5 minutes to discuss some of the features and benefits of the watch we've chosen for this video.
The Seiko Monster, the classic diver that's gonna make you holler after 24 years and still going strong. Shaking and winding and know your wrist it belongs. Don't give me no lip, don't talk that smack. You think it's ugly, hell, so are you, and your argument's whack. My loony brighter than your wick. It lights up the night and it just won't quit. Back up, bro, get out of my bubble. I'ma dive out of here, ain't looking for trouble.
Today we're going to talk about the OG, the original Orange Monster from Seiko. This is the Generation 1, the very first version that came out. And the original MSRP back in those days, which was around 2000, 2001, was either $425 or $475. I don't remember which, but I do remember it being oddly expensive for a Seiko back then. But there was a lot of oddities to this watch for Seiko back then. But here's the thing, nobody really ever paid that much. We typically bought them for under $300. I remember most of mine I bought for around $225, $250 on the original black and the original orange. And most all of them came just on a rubber strap, and you kind of had to search to find one of the bracelet versions, mostly due to popularity, not scarcity. Now let's get the specs out of the way quickly because anyone new to the Monster is going to want to know them right away, and then we'll get back to story time and to the review. So I'll put that off to the side. We'll put the specs up here on the screen. Case diameter of 42 millimeter, and that is something that for some reason there's a bit of contention around. Some people measure it at 41, some people measure it at 42, some others at 43. It's actually just a tick over 42. It's like 42.3 millimeters or something like that. You've got 316L stainless steel. It's got a unidirectional rotating dive bezel. And one of the things that sets this version apart from others is the fact that you have the minute markings, or second markings, however you want to consider them, 05, 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, right next to the hour markers. And that's something the later versions dropped. So keep that in mind. You have a Hardlex crystal, which is Seiko's name for a mineral crystal, and a diver's flip lock safety clasp that also has the dual push buttons. So you've got the extra security. And inside of that clasp also is going to be the diver's wetsuit extension, which I've always had a hard time getting open. I would hate to be on a boat somewhere and have to open that up. Yeah, I'm just not gonna, I'm sorry, it's over here. I was reaching for the wrong spot. So it just simply hooks this way and then it wedges here. We're used to kind of, like what I was trying to do over here, just pop it. And it doesn't just pop, it just kind of hinges a little bit, and then you have to unhook it. So there we go, there's that. Not that really anybody ever uses a diver's wetsuit extension, but it's there if you want it. Now, when they first came out, I thought it was ugly as hell, like most other people did. But somehow it grew on me, and I bought one pretty quickly in the orange. But I wasn't really a huge orange dial person back at that time, so it wasn't long before I bought the Black Monster. I ended up wearing the Black Monster probably twice as often as I wore my orange. And they were constantly in my rotation. Even though I had a large collection of watches, they were always in my rotation. And soon after that, when they released them, I was buying the limited editions. I bought the yellow Monster, I bought the blue Monster, which was the fairly bright blue. I know there have been a few other blues in other generations, but that version had a fairly bright colored blue. And from what I recall, the quarter hour scale, the 15-minute scale was in red on the bezel. I could be wrong about that, but I think I'm correct. And one interesting thing to note is the yellow Monster was the first of the monsters to ever get the Sapphlex crystal. Sapphlex was Seiko's proprietary sapphire crystal back then, and it also introduced the candy bar day-date magnifier to the Monster series, which we did see in future generations. And we see now in like the King Samurai, where they have the magnification bubble that covers both the day and the date. Now, I've seen a few people speculate online as to the origins of the nickname Monster, but I still haven't seen anybody get it right. Some have said that it was called the Monster because of the shark-like teeth on of the hour markers, but those didn't even exist until the second generation. Realize this is the generation that it got named the Monster, and there are no shark-like teeth on here. It doesn't have a monster mouth like you see on Gen 2 and going forward. It was dubbed the Monster on a particular specific watch forum due to it being so monstrously large and so monstrously ugly. I know because I was a member. Now, I had nothing to do with the naming of that whatsoever. It was just, from what I recall, it was somebody that was just making a post about it, and they just kind of threw that name out there, and it stuck. Everybody on the forum, everybody in the group, just began calling it the Orange Monster and the Black Monster. And there were, of course, jokes that went along with Black Monster. And yeah, so we won't go into that. We're not going to make this an X-rated video. Now today, we certainly don't see a 42 millimeter watch as being monstrously big, and obviously ugly would be subjective. Like I said, when I first saw them, I thought it was one of the ugliest watches in the world, mostly because I didn't like the shape of the bezel with these big notches that were cut out when you saw it from this bird's eye view. I just thought it was hideous. But it grew on me so fast. And once I got it, I didn't care what it looked like in pictures. I didn't care what other people thought about it. I just went, wow, I love this watch because it wore so well. Keeping in mind that prior to 2002, a sport watch of any sort was usually maxing out at 40 millimeters, and your popular sizes were still 38 to 40 for most men. And yeah, so you go back to the Rolex Submariner and things like that. Everything in the sports sector or dive sector was really modeled after that. Now, if you were really into dive watches for a long time, maybe you had something like one of the original Seiko Willards from the 1960s or the 1970s, and those were a little bit larger just because of the cushion style case. But when it came to round cases, this was considered to be huge, which these days I kind of find laughable. All right. So here it is on my 8-inch wrist. Give you an idea of how that wears. Still, honestly, one of the most comfortable divers I've ever owned. A lot of that's because of how thin this is for being a 200-meter diver. It doesn't have a lot of weight. There is substantial weight. You do know you're wearing a watch on your wrist. It is substantial, but it's not grotesquely heavy or anything like that. But just to give you a frame of reference, and I put this review up just recently, my Zen U1, that's my comfort zone, 44 millimeters. This is the smallest I'll go, down into 42. And I think it still looks good. It looks appropriate. It doesn't look huge. It doesn't look too tiny. It's just a really good classic look. Now, I kept my original for several years, probably around 8 years or so, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then I sold them both, or actually I sold them all, as I began to chase more and more and more expensive watches as I was building out my collection at the time. But just a few years ago, I think maybe around 2019, I found myself really wanting one again, but I only wanted a Gen 1 because that was the model that captured my heart. I wanted to have the day and date, and I wanted the original sticker markers that you see here without the borders. So I put out a note on my Facebook, and a friend reached out and said, hey, I've got an original in mint, unsized, unworn condition. So I got super excited as I began to message him back and start to make some price offers. He refused and said he'd rather gift it to me. And he said it was a gift because of all of the watches that I had turned him onto over the years that built his collection. He wanted to say thank you by giving me a really cool gift. And I thought that was just amazingly awesome. So, of course, that means that this stays with me for good. This will never leave my collection. No matter how my collection may evolve over the years, this will always remain. And it's a good thing because I still love it and I still wear it a lot. But now I'm on the prowl for 3 other variations to add alongside of this watch, because in my opinion, the Monster is an enduring classic that is still one of the best dive watches you can buy regardless of your budget. Its bold design, excellent colorways, and incredible luminescence, in my opinion, make it a true must-have for any watch collection, no matter what level you're collecting at. I want the Halloween Monster, I want a Dracula, and I want to Save the Ocean's Penguin, also known as the Happy Feet. But the first 2 I keep seeing hitting around $800 or so on eBay, and as much as I love the Monster series, I just don't think that they're worth that much to me. I'm good around $400 or $500 for sure, so hey, if you've got one, hit me up. I'll probably buy it from you. So recently, I've rekindled my love for the Monster, and I've been wearing it a lot over the last year or 2. And now, especially while I've decided to revive my watch channel here, and I have some exciting micro brand watches on the way to me, I realize that I need to sit down and properly recognize how important the Monster has been to me over my years of collecting, specifically in dive watches. And every time I go to buy a King Samurai or a King Turtle, I stop myself because I just don't know if I really want them badly enough or if I'm going to wear them often enough to justify the purchase since I have my Monster. And yeah, it feels a little bit crazy because this watch is the absolute minimum threshold for case size for me. As I already mentioned, I can't wear smaller than a 42 millimeter. It just looks like a child's watch on me. If I try to wear a 38 or 40 millimeter, it feels very, very feminine. It looks very, very childish. It just doesn't work. Now, I don't want a big pie plate on my wrist. I don't want to go back to the days where we were all wearing 46, 48, 50 millimeter watches. I just don't have that interest anymore. But this size, to me, it's like, it just works. It doesn't look as small as it is. And it wears so comfortably. One of the things I've never done with these, which I'm surprised because I do it with a lot of my other watches, I have never taken it off the bracelet. And the fact is, it's got drilled lugs, so that makes it super easy to take it off of the bracelet. So I think at some point soon, I'm going to get some extra NATO straps because this is a smaller lug width than I typically have, which it's a 20 millimeter lug width. Most of my watches are 22 and 24 millimeters, so that's where I have my extra straps. But yeah, I think I am going to try wearing this on a few different straps and see how much I like it, because I've always just loved the look and the feel of it on the bracelet. And I really do like the way they did the bracelet. It's got a nice taper. What I don't like, and you'll see it here, is they force a stronger taper on the last couple of links toward the clasp, and you have this drop off, which creates these very, very sharp corners. I mean, they can actually cut into you, and that's kind of crappy. But you can see how much wear this has had over the years. But I still find it to be very, very comfortable. There's no binding. All the links are very, very smooth. Nobody's really a fan of the pin and collar system, but I've never had any issues. I've been very lucky with being able to size them pretty easily. And honestly, if you just take your time, you don't really have too much to worry about. But you do have to know that there's a collar in there, because if you've never sized one before and you've sized other friction pin bracelets and you go to push the friction pin out, you go to open it and you're not being very careful, you're going to lose that collar and it's gone. I swear to God, it will be gone forever. Even your friggin' vacuum isn't going to find that pin. It's gone. So if you've never sized a Seiko before, I would highly suggest either ordering a couple of extra collars, just so that you have them on hand, or just be very aware and be extraordinarily careful the first time you do it so that you're prepared for it, because they will slide right out and be gone forever. Now, let's talk about the movement for a second, because the originals had the 7S26, and that's marked right down here on the dial. So you've got a 7S26 movement in there. Being a non-hand winding and non-hacking movement is an annoyance. And I'm so glad that they did change out the movements in the future generations to the 4R36 and the 6R15, because it really is a pain in the butt. Especially with its short power reserve. You got a 40-hour power reserve. That's a big pain in the butt. But honestly, this damn thing's going to work forever, so I'll take a few inconveniences along the way. It's not the worst thing. So there are only two things I don't like about this watch, and they're combined with the same process here. The short power reserve means that if I don't keep this on a watch winder, which this lives on a watch winder, then I'm going to have to reset the time, the day, and the date, because you have these extra complications here. And then you have to give it the old shaky shake, because you can't hand wind it. And the crown absolutely sucks. The crown guard, the way that this case shroud comes out so far, and this additional crown guard here, it's hard to get in there and get a hold of it if it's screwed down really, really tightly. And the shape of the crown itself will dig into your fingers. If you're trying to get a really, really tight grip to get that open, it'll dig into your fingers and it's not very comfortable. But the crown itself works very, very well. I'm going to go ahead and flip this past midnight here. And you see how long it takes the 7S26 to process or engage the day of the week. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but hey, whatever. So I can just push it back in, give it a quick screw down. It's a nice smooth, threaded crown. Feels nice. My favorite design feature on this watch is the bezel. Because when you look at it, 50% of the height of this case isn't the case at all. It's the bezel. It feels great. I love the smoothness by which it ratchets. And mine has very, very little rollback. I mean, it's not even a half a click rollback. And it can be a little bit loose if you're doing this, but when it's in place, it stays there and everything is perfectly aligned, because, believe it or not, there was a time in history where Seiko knew how to align their bezels to their hour markers and their chapter rings. You had full alignment of everything. Not so much these days, even in their $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 watches. There is the classic great tidal wave on the back of the case back. screwed in case back, screw down crown, 200 meters water resistant. It is everything that a decent diver should be. And I think that really brings us to the other thing that I absolutely love, love, love about this watch, the Lumibrite. The Lumibrite is one of the biggest stars of the show here. The luminescence is so brilliant and so bright as well as long-lasting, it's long been the benchmark for small brands to reach for when they produce their divers. So I think it's time to break out the UV light, give it a quick little hit, and let's see how the Loom comes out. Just a quick look. Yeah, I can't ever get enough of the Monster Loom. It is so fantastic. It's so easy to read at a glance. The handset is amazing. I've always loved the handset on this. The very large indices going around the dial. Just fantastic. To give you a quick example here, I'm going to kick the UV light back on. And I'm going to charge up my Zen here for a second. We'll recharge this so that they're, oops, darn it. So that they're evenly matched. Now you tell me, which one is the $300-$400 watch and which one is the nearly $3,000 watch? When it comes to the Loom, the Seiko is actually better in its initial brightness. Now, as far as fading, as I mentioned in this review on the Zen, to the camera lens and to the light adjuster or non-light adjusted eye, you get about 30-35 minutes of being able to see the Loom on the U1 dial. And you get just about that much, I believe, on here. It's been a while since I wore it to bed. But to light adjusted eyes, like if you're asleep and you wake up and look at your wrist, you'll see it all throughout the entire night. And I know that to be the case with the Seiko as well. It's really, really good Loom. And for a watch that you're not breaking the bank to get, that are commonly available all over the place, this is a really, really great way to go. So, if you're just dipping your toes into Seiko and you're looking at models like the Samurai and the Turtle and 007s, 009s, things like that, don't pass by the Monster and think, that's antiquated or that's ugly. I'm going to go for the newer stuff or the slicker stuff. You're doing yourself a great disservice, especially when you get down to how slim this is for a true diver. The way that it wears on the wrist, the incredible Loom, and the cool factor. This is one of those watches that it's the way that, I was talking about this with somebody the other day, the way that Panerai used to be. You could look at someone as a watch lover wearing a Panerai, you give them that little nod of appreciation because unlike, say, like a Rolex, a lot of people just didn't recognize what that watch was. But we all knew. Now Panerais are extremely common, extremely popular, and most people do know what they are. But this is one of those watches that when you're wearing it, if somebody, you catch somebody really looking at it, and they give you a little nod, or maybe they even say, hey, nice watch, I think that's great, they're another watch lover, because watch guys, watch gals, watch people know this watch. It will always be recognized. There is nothing like it except for the watches that replicated it. And I don't fault them for it. Because for a long time, these were hard to get and super expensive, and people were hoarding the ones that they had, and then people just wanted the limited editions, and it got crazy. As a matter of fact, there are two brands really, really well known for making homages to this. What is it? Islander. I'm sorry, I almost forgot Mark's brand. Islander, and they're extraordinarily well made from what I understand. I've never handled an Islander watch, but I've been told by numerous people that they're very, very, very well made. And another brand that's well known for making a monster variant or a monster homage is a brand called Heimdallr. It's one of those AliExpress brands, and they're very inexpensive. I am absolutely going to buy one of those because they make a cool, deep burgundy red dial that I really want. And they've never done that with Seiko. The closest they came was the purple monster, where the whole thing was, or it was called the Purple Knight, I think. It was all blacked out, and it had a very deep cherry red dial that a lot of people just called purple, I think. I've only seen images, and the images, they didn't look purple to me. They looked like a deep, dark cranberry red. I'm sorry, it didn't look red to me. They looked like a deep, deep, deep purple. I want that Heimdallr because they make it in a deep crimson red that I thought looked awesome. And I also think it's okay because I own a real monster. It's not like I'm trying to pass off something that's fake as the real thing because I have a monster. When I want to wear the real thing, I'll have this on my wrist. But if I want to wear this look with that red dial, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I think that's going to be cool. Anyway, I'm going to end this here and move on. What I'll do is I will part ways with you for right now with a Loom test, and we'll see how long that luminescence actually lasts.
The Seiko Monster, the classic diver that's gonna make you holler. After 24 years, it's still going strong. Shaking and widening on your wrist, it belongs. Don't give me no lip, don't talk that smack. You think it's ugly, hell, so are you. And your arguments whack. My Loom, my bright, is brighter than your wit. It lights up the night, and it just won't quit. Back up, bro, get out of my bubble. I'ma dive out of here, ain't looking for trouble. Seiko Monster, the classic diver that's gonna make you holler. After 24 years, it's still going strong. Shaking and whining on your wrist, it belongs. Don't give me no lip, don't talk that smack. You think it's ugly, hell, so are you. And your arguments whack. My Loom, my bright, is brighter than your wit.